Welcome to On the Point Podcast, a podcast for all things Overwatch with a heavy focus on League, discussing roster moves, weekly matchups, and 2 weeks worth of content because things are a little crazy, you guys, and we might have missed a week, but that's okay.
Yeah, life be that way sometimes.
It do be that way sometimes. Anyway, I'm Katie, I'm the support main,
I'm CJ, I'm the tank main.
and if you can't think of anything else to start with or any other fun shit to front load with, let's get right into this.
No, yeah,
Let's talk
let's get right in.
Let's
Week
talk
19
about week
matchups.
19. Yeah.
Yeah. So London Spitfire drops to the Shanghai Dragons, who pick up another 3-0 win. The NYXL 3-0 sweep Seoul Dynasty, looking great with new addition Haksal. Paris Eternal goes 5 rounds with Boston Uprising and edges out that 3-2 victory. The Florida
Yeah.
Mayhem takes on the Dallas Fuel and picks up the victory 3-1. Atlanta Reign versus LA Gladiators 1-3 in favor of the Gladiators. Fusion versus Houston Outlaws. Fusion picks up that 3-0 win. Vancouver Titans are swept 3-0 by the Toronto Defiant. And the LA Valiant sweep the Washington Justice 3-0 as well.
So, for the most part, we went the same way on all
Yeah.
of these matches, and I think we were accurate on all of these matches, with the exception of I picked Florida and you picked Dallas.
Yeah, Dallas, it's one of those things where I was feeling very good considering how they played in the May Melee because
Yeah.
they played tight, they had clearly strategized, they were executing on set plays well, and while Decay definitely popping off was a thing, that changed the complexion of everything. I felt like the rest of the team played more confidently and competently around him than they did in week 19 and week 20. And the other thing is that really hurt them in week 19 is Doha's not a hit scan player. Decay is. So ultimately, you with Echo out of the pool, you're going to be playing you're gonna basically be playing 2 hit scans and either Tracer, Ash, Widow, whatever. Like there's some combination of those 3 in pretty much anything.
And Doha not being able to really play those characters up to the level of some of the other hit scan specialists in the league would
Yeah,
kneecap the team.
yeah, and obviously that's nothing on Doha. It's just literally not his job.
Yeah, and I mean, going up against the Florida Mayhem and, again,
Yeah,
runners up in the May Melee for a
yeah,
good goddamn reason, this was
and
not going to be
BQ
an easy match anyway.
and BQB put on, I think, the best performance we've seen out of him. His Hanzo is fucking clean, and I wish that Dallas had taken the adaptation and put Doha on the Hanzo because I feel like it suits him more.
Yeah, and then also, you can't count out Yaki. You can never count out Yaki. But good lord. So that's the only one we differed on, but the rest of them, the Philly match was so painful to watch as an Outlaws fan.
Yeah,
It just was.
that went about as brutally as I thought it was going to.
And honestly, I again, it's been 2 weeks since we recorded. I can't remember exactly what I said, but I feel like I thought Paris was going to play a little better against Boston. And then you look at week 20 and Paris's performance there, and you got to kind of wonder what the fuck is happening.
Well, here's the thing. I think in the match up against Boston and the matchup against Shock, I think part of it comes down to they're not utilizing their DPS lineup well. So,
And this is a
they're
DPS lineup that consists of Soon, Sparkle, Eggsy, like
yeah.
all these very large names that yeah.
Oh yeah, no, they're very skilled players. They're very capable, but the thing is, like, Decay is great, or Decay. What am I
Decay.
talking
You're
about?
right. Decay is great, but we're not
Decay
talking
is great,
about the
yeah.
fuel.
So Sparkle looked way less comfortable on the May than Nico does.
This is
Like,
very true.
and they put Nico on like the Reaper and the Tracer instead of Soon, and they played a bunch of weird off-meta comps. Like, they played things that I don't think are necessarily the strongest possible play, But here's the thing. Compositions, like the metagame, generally speaking, is the ideal composition to play just based on what's strong on the moment. It is the on paper best approach, but you don't always need to play that. There are
Yeah.
definitely times where playing into the strengths of your team is advantageous, and that was something that Element Mystic, and the reason I keep bringing up Element Mystic in regards to the Paris Eternal is because their head coach was Element Mystic, their off tank was Element Mystic, Sparkle was Element Mystic, Xe was Element Mystic. Like
A good chunk of the team.
their DNA is very hard EM coded right now, and they would in the time where they were playing Goat, where Goats was still strong though not as dominant in some of the lower tiers of the scene, like kind of right before 222 came about, they would be playing like Sombra Doomfist because Doha's a fucking beast on the Sombra, and Sparkle's Doomfist, like, that man fucks on Doomfist. Like,
He is an unholy terror.
yes, he straight up has sex on Doomfist. Uh, so
Thank you for
basic.
that image. You're welcome, fanfiction writers of the world. And thus we
So
continue on.
but the point I'm making is Element Mystic would play into their strengths as a team over the meta and just kind of do what they want, and it would work because they were practiced with it and it played into what they did very, very well. Whereas here, I think, their ideas maybe could have worked, but they had the pieces in all the wrong places. Like, I think you want Nico on that May compared to how Sparkle looked on it. You want Soon to be playing the Tracer and the Reaper. Just figure out which fucking characters you want there, because you have a guy on your roster that plays any of them.
Yeah. And then when you have two people who are good at them and you switch the roles, like, don't do that. Don't do that.
They had Nico doing Soon stuff, and like Nico is not bad. Like, especially this season, he's kind of got a new lease on life, but it's like,
He's not Soon. He should not be
yeah,
doing Soon stuff. He
he's
should be
he's
doing Nico
not
stuff.
he's not a Tracer player. Put him on the Mei, put him on the Genji, and he'll do very well with that. Like, he's a projectile DPS player who can flex onto Diva. I don't expect you to need him to do that because you've got Hanbin, but my point is, you know what he can do. Why are you having him do something that you have a player who's objectively better at that job when you have used that other player on different maps where you're not having him do his comfort picks? It doesn't make sense.
I have to wonder, and we'll definitely get into this more in the news section and when
Yeah.
we talk about the Dallas game in week 20. But I have to wonder about the perception going up against a weaker team. Like, we can experiment because we're playing against X
Mhm.
team. We're playing against Boston. We're playing against Vancouver. We're playing against Toronto. For a long time, it was we're playing against Florida. That is obviously not the case anymore. And I will make a case for we're playing against Houston no longer being the case as well,
Yeah.
for however that sentence worked out. But I
No, I
wonder
get what you mean.
if we wind up with these close matches or these upsets, because if it's a coaching mindset, a player mindset, wherever it is, the idea is, oh, we're up against Boston. We still need to play our best, but we can experiment because it's Boston. And Boston turns around and says, yeah, we're getting better.
Yeah,
Surprise.
and I think that's kind of what happened against Vancouver for Fuel, but we'll get into that.
I
I
think
have a
that's absolutely what happened against Vancouver for Fuel, because we got
well
that
the
from
thing
the
is
horse's mouth.
Well, the thing is, we both have opinions on this. Let's get through
This
the
is
week
true.
20 matchups. Let's go through the results, and then we'll get into that.
Did anything else stand out for you for week 19, or was it a lot of as expected?
A lot of as expected. Um, I still like don't know what the deal is with the Atlanta Rain. Honestly, like they did beat the Defiant, but I think right now we can say that the Defiant, after week 20, like they're definitely one of the bottom teams in the league right now, which
Yeah. I'm not going to go with the worst because the Washington Justice exists, but
Yeah,
they're pretty far down there.
yeah. So they beat the Defiant, but like again, there is so much talent. It's similar to Fuel in that there's so much talent on this roster, and they're just not firing on all cylinders. And like, so with the Atlanta Rain, the and we'll talk about him more later on because news. Um, their head coach and team manager is Sefi Brad Rajani. Um, and they have other coaches in the form of Silence, who is an analyst for last night's leftovers, and Mentalist, who was a coach for GC Busan Wave and a few other teams beyond that. But GC Busan Wave is kind of the biggest one that you would kind of pay attention to.
Also,
Um,
having a coach named Mentalist is kind of amazing.
no, I love it. Um, and so it's one of those things where I'm just like, I think one thing is they made a mistake in letting go of Casores because Casores used to be their player development coach,
Ah,
and after they released him, he became the head coach and committee member of Team Netherlands in the Overwatch World Cup 2019. And
okay.
I don't think anyone expected Team Netherlands to make it into the top 10, but
But
they
there
did
they
it.
were,
Yeah, they performed very well and beat Russia and Canada
which is crazy.
and had a fucking brutal match against France.
And France played pretty damn well that year, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yeah, I get the
Yeah.
World Cups a little mixed up because, you know. But yeah, so that it's Atlanta just seems to me like a team that I feel like we're getting a little bit of season one Valiant there with you never know which team is actually showing up
Well, the
today.
thing is, they're not showing up, period, right now.
Uh,
The thing is, I don't see them beating teams that I expect them. They're beating teams that I can see them beating, and then they're losing to teams that I think that I would place above them in some capacity, and my expectations just keep adjusting down and keep being correct.
so do you think that had they been playing up to your expectations, do you think they could have taken the Gladiators?
I don't know because these are the two teams that I'm having a very hard time getting a beat on more than anyone else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, trying to figure out the Gladiators right now. You might as well be looking through a kaleidoscope for as clear
yeah,
as that picture is.
and there's one other thing that I want to point out, and this is interesting to me because so Brad Rajani, Sefi, the head coach of the Atlanta Rain and kind of the guy who's built the team, who was actually the head coach of Shock in season one before they picked up Krusty.
Hmm.
So yeah, fun fact. Um, he was so he was used to be the head coach of a team called Selfless.
Okay.
And Selfless was one of the NA teams that was fairly big in like the early tournament days of Overwatch. Not basically. Let me just read you the list of people they had on this team. So Doc from the San Francisco Shock in season one.
All right.
You wouldn't know the name Kresnik because he really hasn't been involved in Overwatch since 2017. But their DPS line, their support line was Doc and Michael 3D. Their tank line was Kresnik on main tank, and actually, you'd be surprised, but he used to play professionally before he became a full time streamer. Emong,
Huh.
yeah, and he was their off tank. And their DPS line was Sinatra and Defran.
Oh, good lord. Oh my god. Holy shit.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So basically, they were known for playing balls to the wall aggressive and having insane plays. Just they they were they weren't the meme team. That was probably NRG and then later Envy to a certain extent, but they had a very crowd pleasing style because they didn't give a fuck.
Well, yeah, Sinatra and DeFran as your front line.
And yeah, this was the thing of like, so season, this was like, so Sinatra in season one of the Overwatch League didn't perform to people's expectations because ultimately I think he had a lot to learn on Tracer and playing it at the top level. And you'd see this I remember seeing a VOD review of that Swoosh was doing of a Florida Mayhem versus San Francisco game, and he's like, "Yeah, the thing is, once Sinatra commits, you know exactly what he's going to do. He's going to triple blink in, try and get a kill on the supports, and then recall out. So the thing is, all you need to do is when you see him engaging, peel and protect your supports, and then he'll recall out once you pressure him, and then he's got no cooldowns, and then he's killable."
Wow.
But my
It
which
sounds a bit how like I'd play Tracer, which is not a good thing.
yeah, it's that and that's as a coach, this is the sort of thing I look for. But the point I'm making is you had DeFran not giving a fuck. You had Sinatra who hadn't learned to temper his aggression to play smart yet. And so you just had this team that would frag the fuck out and like hold the enemy spawn door. And so they were really entertaining to watch and people, liked them and they were kind of a very popular team in sort of the early NA scene in Overwatch. But the thing is, they could never really get past the really good teams. They would
And you
lose against teams like Rogue, like Envious, and then depending on the tournament result, things like Cloud9 or Yikes, which that was actually a team. They changed their name like 3 or 4 times. Um,
Okay, but I really enjoy Yikes as a team name. That makes me really happy.
yeah, fun fact that roster, by the way, was on support Ginger Pop, who you wouldn't know because he kind of retired from the Overwatch scene and he plays Fortnite for Rogue now, actually. Um, but yeah, the other support player was Custa.
Custa would be on a team called Yikes.
Their DPS line was Dante and a guy named Za, who used to be a very, very good projectile player, but he hasn't really been involved in Overwatch in almost 2 years. Um, so, but Za and Dante,
Jeez.
and with a tank line of XQC in space.
That wow, I'm having trouble picturing that because XQC is XQC and space is just a sweetie. Like I'm
Space is
having
super chill, and then you've got fucking just motor mouth can like francophone Canadian English just at a million miles an hour. But yeah, no, they were a thing.
flaming rage monster.
Yes, they were a thing. Um,
Wow.
so, but yeah, ultimately, we have in Selfless a team of very talented people who did well in a period where, so prior to the Overwatch League, Overwatch is a game that has gotten infinitely more complex, like exponentially so over the course of its history in terms of how and when to play things. Like early on in Overwatch, it's a much simpler game than it is now because people have had time to refine how these characters are used and keep innovating like new layers onto it. Like again, if you look at the history of Winston, first guy to really use it in tournaments was Internet Hulk, but he didn't really set the world on fire, and it was kind of a niche pick until Miro really showed the potential of the hero. And then once Miro did his thing, other guys, picked up that ball and have run with it and taken it to like new heights and new directions, like Fisher and OG and Gooshway. Um, but I'm getting
Which
off track
left
here.
Miro behind.
Yeah, but the point that I'm making is that you had a team that was super talented in these early days, but kept falling back against the super high level teams and not quite making it. And I think with the shock, we're kind of seeing something similar.
With Atlanta.
Fuck, with
I was gonna
Atlanta.
say, whoa, what?
No, with
No,
Atlanta.
I'm following the thread there. Same coach in
Yeah,
both situations. So, would you think it would be the coaching style, or
the thing is, I don't know. I haven't like looked into it enough, and a lot of Overwatch coaches have content that you can look at. Like Decay has stuff that you can look at. Arrow has stuff that you can look at. Um, Krusty has occasionally put out stuff that you can look at. I don't. At least I haven't seen stuff from Sephi to be like, okay, this is his system. I can't make an
well,
objective judgment on that. But the thing is, when you have a roster this talented with this much just fucking stacked firepower on every position, and they're not living up to that potential, it's either they're it's so in other esports, especially like CS:GO, you'll have these times where orgs will develop super teams where they'll build these rosters full of like the biggest name, baddest motherfucker players that you can get. And sometimes it works out great and sometimes it doesn't because ultimately you sometimes those like top of the line superstar players are big personalities that do well in specific environments, and having five of them in the case of CS:GO in a room together doesn't necessarily produce the same results that you have in like a team that's more built around them and what they do and so on.
yeah, in a team game, your team has to work well together. And this is what we're actually seeing in Toronto. We've got a
Yeah,
bunch of good players that are just not clicking as consistently as we like.
yeah, and I
I
think
say we, I mean
Toronto.
me.
Yeah, right. Well, again, hey, I don't want anyone to fail.
No,
Um,
no, but I'm capital I invested.
yeah,
Team
and
Gamer Snacks is on there, and therefore I'm invested.
yeah, and honestly, I think that they've in picking up Cruz and Numlocked and Zeke have added some tools that they can really use to improve. I just want to see more. They just seem lost in terms of like how to play these compositions and adapt on the fly. They seem like a mechanically individually skilled team that maybe isn't super well coached, and that's speculation on my part. Like the thing is,
You
Lilbo,
lost me.
who
Are we talking about Toronto or Atlanta with that one?
Toronto now, because you brought it up, and that's why I brought up Numlocked and Zeke and Cruz.
Oh no, I'm talking specifically about a lot of really good players who may not be being well coached. I'm
Yeah,
bringing it back around and also being an ass.
yeah, well, the reason I bring up Lilbo is because he has been a pro Overwatch player for a while and played on Eagle Gaming and Team Gigante. So he's been in successful organizations with good coaches. And fun fact, before he was a Overwatch player, he was a professional StarCraft player.
Ah,
Yeah,
additional pylons.
he was a Protoss player, so that joke lands extra hard.
That's
Um,
literally the only thing I know about StarCraft, and I learned it from Cards Against Humanity.
well,
Like, I
you
got
you
nothing.
you unintentionally hit the bullseye on that.
Stopped clock.
But yeah, the point I'm making is I think both of these teams have a lot of talent, and either necessarily they're not compatible or the coaching staff isn't necessarily where it needs to be in order to really get the most out of these players, because you have coaches like uh, again, this is kind of the quintessential example here, but Krusty, who's really good at developing a player and bringing potential out of them that you didn't really know that they had. Because here's the thing, and I said this back in season one, like when we started doing this. Um, well, I said this back in a podcast I was a guest on for season one. I was not high on Striker as a pickup initially. I thought he was a very mechanically talented player, that but ultimately there were better tracers, better hit scan players out there. And holy fuck did he prove me wrong.
Hmm.
But the thing is, I think what we saw of him in like Apex and that is very different from what we got on Boston and the Shock. And a good player can really help a coach. A good player can really be helped by a coach that can bring out their potential. Because if they have the mechanics, what you need then is to give them the sort of the conceptual framework of like, okay, why is this a good idea? Why is that a bad idea? And help them learn to get the most out of their hero and synergize with the team. And once that happens, if you've got those elements, you've got a very explosive player.
And
So
Shock has a ton of them.
yeah. And so ultimately here though, I don't think that right now we're seeing it's one of those things I mentioned. It's either, maybe the roster isn't quite gelling for whatever reason, maybe the coaching staff isn't adequately preparing them, but that's all speculation. I can't say anything with any degree of certainty. Let's just get on to week 20.
What I love is that I asked you if anything stood out in week 19 and you gave us a history lesson.
Yeah, but
Know your Overwatch, kids.
this is what I'm here for though.
It is.
I have a very in-depth knowledge of how to of this game at a professional level because I've been following it since 2016.
And
And
I'm here for
yeah,
framework culture and shitty jokes.
yes. Anyway,
Exactly.
week
Week
20.
20.
Seoul Dynasty continues their losing skid with Guangzhou Charge picking up a 3-2 win over them. London Spitfire likewise picks up a win over the Chengdu Hunters 3-0, while Hangzhou beats out NYXL 3-2. The San Francisco Shock took on the Paris Eternal and absolutely slapped them 3-0.
My God.
Atlanta Reign takes on the Toronto Defiant, and, let it rain 3-0 in favor of Atlanta. LA Gladiators took on the Houston Outlaws, and, the first two games were close, but Outlaws ran away with it with the last two, picking up the 3-1 win over, I think it's safe to say, the heavily favored Gladiators in that case.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Dallas Fuel got swept by the Vancouver Titans, 0-3. Then Guangzhou Charge takes on the Hangzhou Spark, with Guangzhou taking the win 3-2. The Chengdu Hunters drop the match to the Shanghai Dragons in a 2-3 loss. NYXL beats the London Spitfire 3-1. The Boston Uprising is stomped out by the Philly Fusion 0-3. LA Valiant takes the win over the Florida Mayhem 3-1. And the Washington Justice exist against the San Francisco Shock in a 0-3 loss.
So this weekend, I have to say, we didn't do predictions for this because we were unable to record last week, but about half of these are the exact opposite of what I would have picked. I know I would have picked
Yes.
the Gladiators. I definitely would have picked the Fuel. And
Mhm.
honestly, I would not have picked Valiant against Florida. Like, there's
Neither
when I,
would I, but
but damn, there's a good case for it. But
yeah, and
sitting
it's one of
down,
those things that I think the Mayhem and the Valiant have very similar strengths as rosters to a certain extent,
true.
because ultimately the scariest parts of these lineups are the DPS.
Shax and Yaki.
Mm-hmm.
Just Shax and Yaki.
Well, don't
Good
forget
lord.
KSP.
Oh yeah.
So ultimately, it's a head-to-head matchup, and like the Florida Mayhem does very well in games where Yaki and BQB can kind of run away with things. But in this, you had guys who can opt into that 1v1 and come out ahead. And so, like, I feel like I have to rewatch it to really give you an in-depth analysis, but I feel like in that sort of situation, when your DPS stars can't pop off on their own, the team either has to enable them to do it or play better to alleviate some of the pressure that's being put on them, that's stuffing them basically. And I just don't think they were able to do it. And the thing about the Valiant, even in the matches they've lost, is they're a very inventive team. Like
Yeah.
Hacking 10 has really upped the in-game IQ of this roster, and I think they're creative, capable, and talented, and they play together well. And ultimately, it hasn't been able to close the gap against a team like the Shock, aside from that first matchup where the Shock was still the Shock hadn't hit their form again, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. The Shock were
Um,
just coming off vacation.
yeah. And so while it hasn't necessarily gotten them to the very top of things yet, we are seeing improvement. And even in the matches they lose, I don't think it's because they get outsmarted. And now they run an even keel and playing in a clever, inventive way. So I think ultimately that's kind of one of the difference makers.
Well, and also keep in mind this is what what I think we should start calling a storyline match.
Yes,
There's
because
a
there's a
grudge
bunch of
here.
players on the Valiant that
We're
were.
rejected Florida players.
Yep, yep.
McGravy KSF, I believe. One of the KSs, I believe it's
Mhm.
KSF.
Yes.
Shax traded for Fate.
Yeah.
And we didn't see Fate. And we definitely saw KSF and Shax and McGravy going completely bug nuts during
Again,
this whole last game.
it goes to that Fisher thing of just, hello, gladiators. It's London. Can we have Fisher back? Like
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
immediately comes to mind.
Yeah. So this, I just, good lord. We had two maps that were very close, and we had two maps that were nowhere near close, and they were the bookends. And I was doing something for half of this match, and I walked back in to watch the Valiant take a 5-minute time bank on Hanamura, and I about lost my goddamn mind.
Yeah, once they started feeling it, they were really ready for it. Like once the
Well,
momentum was on their side, they just picked that ball up and ran.
And Hollywood was so ridiculously close. Like that was a crazy one. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's
absolutely.
the back and forth on this and Florida showing up like crazy. Like I would love to see a rematch in the Summer Showdown. I would not be
Yeah,
surprised if that's where we went.
I can definitely see it, especially if the Valiant continue this form.
Yes.
So, other
And then
matchups that I think we need to talk about is Gladiators versus Houston, and then Dallas versus Vancouver. Which one do we want to get into?
I think we also just need to mention that Guangzhou had a hell of a week.
Oh, Guangzhou. Yeah, the thing is, Guangzhou are some bad motherfuckers. That I said at the start of this that I think their roster is underrated for how good it is, and they just keep getting better.
Yeah. I think that I remember picking between them and Shanghai for the finals for the Mele, and it didn't go that way, but that's what I remember the prediction being, literally coin flipping and landing on Shanghai. Also, Shanghai being like, what if we do another reverse sweep? How about that? Like, stop it. If you're gonna win,
Mhm.
just fucking win. So the APAC region is, I don't really think we have any bombed out teams in APAC anymore. Even London's really picking it up.
Yeah, no, London definitely has improved, and I think they've improved fairly quickly. Though I still don't think they necessarily have the firepower to really compete in such a stacked region just yet.
Oh no, no, but they're not making fools of themselves,
No, no, they're not.
which is good. And to that point, I would like to segue into the Dallas match.
Yeah, that one was frustrating to watch because
I'm sure.
yeah,
Oh.
it's one of those things where like I see them pick up Oni God, and my immediate response is fuck yes, because Oni God is a really good player. Oni God kind of made a name for himself on Angry Titans, where he picked up a contenders Europe championship and 2 second place finishes. He's finished top 3 in Contenders Europe 4 times with 1 championship.
Wow.
Um, and he is a very good. He played for Third Impact. He played on Team Envy, which later became Team Doge when Team Envy kind of released all their players in that sort of belt tightening session where most of the teams kind of dropped their academies. And
Yeah.
he's a hit scan DPS player. He's very good at Widowmaker. He's very good at McCree. He's very good at Tracer, Ashe, Sombra. That's what we know him for doing, basically. And my response was just, fuck yes. If Echo's off the table, having someone who can go onto that Tracer and fill that, the Tracer or the Widow or the fucking whatever to kind of suit your comp, he's a great fill-in for when there's basically a meta that doesn't have a hero that's suited for Doha. And while I was like initially in the matchup against the fucking Florida Mayhem, I don't know why I said that weird. But in the matchup against Mayhem, when they had Doha in, I was wondering why they didn't put in like AKM because he's a hit scan player, and I know that you maybe haven't been scrimming with him much, but this is what he does, and it's not what Doha does. But yeah, I think Oni God, has some upside over AKM, and I think that he has a lot of heroes that Doha doesn't really do well. So I was like, okay, basically we're going to see either Doha and Decay or Oni God and Decay.
And then Decay
And
took a week off. 2 weeks off, rather.
yeah, is he?
I,
Yeah, and
I think we also need to mention, because this is part of it, is that Dallas also picked up and put in Paintbrush from the Gladiators.
yes,
So we
so,
have a different comp from usual.
which I don't necessarily think is, I think Paintbrush is a good pickup because there's definitely some things that he can do, and we've discussed it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm just saying that that's something to keep in mind, that it wasn't just swapping out one new player, it was swapping in two.
Yeah, and Closer, I believe, did do a lot of in-game leadership stuff for Dallas. So it's you have someone new in with someone who does a lot of, sort of coordination work out, and a new DPS player in a situation where, frankly, none of Doha's heroes are in meta. So it's like one of those things of, if you had a different hero pool, in effect, or if you had Decay able to slot in, I don't think playing Oni God and Paintbrush is a bad idea. I think it's definitely good to get them practice. And when Arrow put out the statement saying basically that Decay needed a break and we wanted a chance to really integrate these new positions in these new players in a more high stakes situation and all of that, like, I understand the logic of that. I just think it was a bad idea because, one, I have said that the Vancouver Titans are improving. It has
Yeah,
been noted by a
and
lot
they
of people that the
visibly
Vancouver
are.
Titans are improving. And while they're definitely one of the weaker teams in the league, and you maybe should feel good about it, about your chances, ultimately the wins and losses still matter. And in a situation where one of your DPS is going to be forced off of his comfort picks, you have one new person in that isn't necessary. That isn't, you have two new people in, one of which is kind of taking the role of one of your more vocal in-game leader players. It's just such a perfect storm of things to kneecap your performance. And I wish that they had just swapped Decay in after the second match and like just practice the shit that you're going to realistically be seeing in the Melee. Because as a coach, I have absolutely arranged scrims for my team against teams that should beat the shit out of them. And the thing is, there's definitely value to be learned from that. It's okay, when we're getting fucking rolled, what
How
is
do
it
we
that's beating
adapt?
us? Is it, Are they playing faster than us? Are they doing different angles than we're doing? Is there something about how they're utilizing the comp or different combinations of cooldowns or ultimates? There's a lot of shit that you can learn from that, and I think to a certain extent Dallas was learning from it because they were playing better in map 3 than they were in map 2, and they were playing it better in map 2 than they were in map 1. But when I do that, it's in scrims.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't do that in a tournament setting if I had a choice.
But most of my input on this is probably going to happen a little more in the news section because I have a very specific bone to pick. But yeah, pretty much. I think this was not a great coaching decision. And I also think, much the same way that season 1 Philadelphia, there was just the ongoing joke about the Carpe carry, and that was it. Um, Dallas kind of has that going for Decay. Like, they
Oh
don't
yeah,
necessarily lean on him 100%, but he has shown the ability to just swap over to Widowmaker and turn a whole team fight around on his own.
yeah,
Like,
and
he's done that, and it's driven us fucking crazy. Like,
yeah, and I
makes
think
me nuts. But he's not in to do that. He's not in to shore up anything that might go wrong. And this is a situation where there is a potential for a lot to go wrong, and he's not there as that crutch. So
yeah,
I hesitate to say, oh, Dallas isn't good without Decay because that's incorrect. But you cannot deny the very important role that Decay plays that it seems like Dallas, no one else is able to do.
yeah,
So
and
I
it's
get wanting to test it out, but
oh
you've
yeah,
also taken out your safety net.
his pop off potential is huge, and the other thing is having that big of a threat doesn't just necessarily. It's not just that you win fights by him popping off, but the threat of that changes the complexion of the matchup because one, if you have a Widowmaker who can just annihilate you on the other team, your positioning is going to be a lot more careful. You're
Yeah.
not going to be able to apply pressure on the enemy team in the same way when they have a Widowmaker that is capable of dominating you or a Tracer who's capable of dominating you. And so it forces the enemy team to play more passively. And because you know that you have that threat, and if you make room for it, it can snowball out of control. It allows you to play more confidently. And I think the fuel in this matchup looked less coordinated, less confident, and less just less
Yeah.
than they have in a while. And I wonder how much of that is, the adaptation of bringing in someone to sort of. We have two new pieces. One, and as good as Onigod is, Decay is just a god. Onigod
Yeah.
is great. I think he's a great pickup. I think he's a good addition to the team, but he he doesn't scare people the way that Decay does.
Decay is consistent and has pop off potential.
Yeah, and he plays around his team very well.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
so ultimately, I think it's a
And
combination of a bunch of factors that played against the Dallas Fuel and put them in a position to lose, and coaching should have recognized that. Like, basically,
and
I
they
I do
didn't.
I do think, I'll freely admit, I think that if you were going to get ballsy and experiment, the three teams you could do it against are Vancouver, Toronto, and Washington. But the thing is, you were lacking so many of the advantages that I think would have helped make this a viable experiment. And all I can say really is I hope they got the data they're looking for from this, because if they go into this next week of games and perform badly again, that does not reflect well.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think it was a bad decision. I think it was a risky one that has a lot more potential to not work out well than work out well. But if you learn from this, there's still stuff there's still value you can pull out of getting beaten like this,
Yeah.
because on the one hand you can learn like, okay, what beat us, what were we doing wrong, what was the other team doing right. You can go like, okay, we need to do this, we need to adjust our comps this way. And also, like, as a coach and as a former, amateur player, you lose a game that you really should win, that shit can light a fire under your ass. Like, when you feel like you have earned something and you're ready to fucking take it and it just doesn't go your way, if you have a good mentality and a good coach to sort of guide you in the right direction, that can really take you up a couple notches. Because, so, fun fact, when I was playing in team play sort of for the first time, there was a team that I ended up playing against in my first scrim that was like my tryout. And they had beaten the team that I was trying out for 4-0 in the previous matchup.
Oof.
I tag in, we beat them 4-0. But the thing is, I joined in the middle of the season of this like tournament. And so basically we end up losing our chances at playoffs to that team by one map.
Oh. Oof.
And we were like, the thing is, we knew who they were playing in the finals, and they asked us like, hey, you guys have scrimmed them a bunch and all that, like, what advice do you have? And we're like, okay, here's what we do. And they used that, and while they won the game, if they won by one more map, we would be in playoffs, and they didn't. So we were rooting really hard for this other team. So the team that I scrimmed against, the would-be rivals, were called Lightbringer, and the other team that we kind of were rooting for at this moment were called Toxic Storm. And we, my team is very visibly rooting for Toxic Storm. And then when Lightbringer won, they're just like, hey, MC, which was my team, they talked a bunch of shit, basically. And that pissed me off, especially because they got knocked out of playoffs immediately. And after I joined, we won. We were on a 12 map winning streak.
You're kind of a scary ass tank, though.
Especially in team play, because like when I'm in a tournament or a scrim, I am effectively narrating every play that my team should make. I'm a very, very vocal main tank when I'm in that setting.
I've noticed.
But the point is, that pissed me off, and I didn't want to be in that position again. And because I was mad and trying to improve, and my coaches encouraged that, up until Lightbringer disbanded, I did not lose a map against them.
Nice.
Not even once. So
we're up against Lightbringer. Bring in CJ.
Pretty much.
Turn on the dark.
Lights out. But so yeah, basically that was a very roundabout way of demonstrating the things you can get out of a narrow, well, maybe not narrow, but out of a loss that you feel like you should have fucking won.
Is it possible to burn a team whose hashtag already has the phrase burn in it?
I have a Dallas jersey in my fucking closet. Like,
I know you do.
I ain't trying to say shit. I'm just saying, basically, learn from this. What I am right now is Tom Hanks at the end of Saving Private Ryan, when Matt and the fuel is Matt Damon like kneeling over me as I'm slumped against the fucking motorcycle bleeding out, and I just go, earn it. Like that. That's me right now.
Don't get tilted. Use the tilt.
Yeah. You have anger, but you don't use it.
I've never seen Saving Private Ryan, so
It's a very good
well, no,
movie.
I've seen the first like half of it. So I saw the beginning. Yeah.
Great scene, but
Anyway,
fuck. Uh,
yeah. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, yeah.
yeah, the movie starts off at the worst section of the worst beach on D-Day.
Yeah, it's yeah. So if you're not equipped for that, don't watch it.
Yeah,
Definitely don't watch it in middle school.
I know.
Anyway,
I watched it in middle school. But yeah,
I
no,
shouldn't have.
legitimately, I know some veterans who have had to leave the room during that scene.
I've heard that that is the case.
It's
So
also,
yeah.
yeah, it's scary accurate to what that was probably like.
So that's Saving Private Ryan. And the point that we're getting at is if the Fuel cannot learn how to use their anger, they will be burned by it. Um, yeah, I know you have a much higher opinion of their coach than I do.
Yeah,
And
it's one
so
of those things where like I like Arrow. He is someone who prior to him becoming the head coach of the Fuel was the head coach of Fusion University, and they did very, very well. He was also previously the head coach of FNRG FE, which is a team that was made from players from Fnatic, NRG Esports, and Gale Force Esports, so FNRG FE, which just acronym of all the letters smashed together, which
Phonographer.
yeah, Fenergifa, Fingerfee. Um,
Okay.
uh, which I will say there was there was a funny Reddit thread back when FNRGFE were a thing, um, of like what does the acronym actually mean? And someone said "fuck NRG, fuck them." Fuck NRG, fuck them. Like,
Okay,
also,
we
all of
do
you
need to move on.
do yourselves a favor, look up their team logo. It's a dachshund corn dog. That's what it is. But so FNRGFE placed decently in a lot of tournaments with more high ranked opponents. So he did well with them. He did well with Fusion University. And he seemed to do well with Fuel initially. And I was a big fan of his sort of analytical content when he would stream on Twitch a little more often. And that's one of the ways I learned to sort of analyze and coach, was kind of by watching the way that he did it. And so it's one of those situations where I've seen him do good things, and I also like him just as a person. And I just don't want to. I want to believe.
You have
I'm.
seen a lot more of him than I have, and therefore we have formed different opinions based on what we've seen. And
Yeah.
I I have an English degree, and therefore I read a lot into words and especially official statements that are
Yeah.
released. Because if it's an official fucking statement, you have had the time to look over your words and to edit.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, we'll get to that, but I believe I had summarized this to my roommate as play stupid games. Uh,
Yeah. And again, like, I think if you had a better meta, or if you incorporated Decay into this, um, it could have been a perfectly valid time to experiment and just really get these new elements in there. But you tied both hands behind your back.
yeah,
The hero pool tied one, you tied the other, and it doesn't look great unless we see the fucking results of this.
he basically called for this match. He called 8 ball corner pocket and then jumped the cue ball off the fucking table, like it's not so bad if you don't call 8 ball corner pocket first.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. And it's a problem. Anyway, talk shit, right? Um, we have another one that we need to get into. That was an upset that we were not expecting. Holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
Gladiators and Outlaws.
Yeah.
It's nice to see the Outlaws doing well. It just is.
Yeah, no, it is. And honestly, like, this is one of the things that makes me genuinely very happy to see, because remember when we were doing our predictions for like which teams are going to do well this season, I was very high on the Outlaws.
Yeah.
I was, like, I think Harsh is a great coach. I think picking up Dream is a good thing. I think having Hureg on the roster is also very good. Like, there was a lot of moves there that I think was great. And they picked up Blase and Jexay. They picked up Repel and Jexay to really shore up the back line, which had always been one of Houston's weakest points. They pick up, you know, Meko, because off tank has also historically been a problem for them. And ultimately, Hydration ended up kind of taking Muma's spot at main tank recently, which we've seen Hydration play main tank before, and he's gotten very good at it over these past few games. And ultimately, again, I like Muma as a person. I don't think he's a very good main tank in a competitive team setting. Because ultimately, I think he's a very technically skilled main tank, but on when you're on main tank, you need to be able to, one, be the tip of the spear and create that space. That's one part of it. But you need to be able to, coordinate your team to follow up with you on that and enable them, because ultimately in tank, to a certain extent, you are an enabler. It is your job to give the rest of your team the ability to pop off and pressure the enemy so that they can't stop that. And for lack of a better term, I think Muma plays very selfishly. He goes for kills, he goes for mechanically impressive things, but he doesn't really set up his team super well. He's really, really good on the Winston, and his Orisa's good, and his Wrecking Ball's good, his Reinhardt's questionable. But it's I don't think he's a great team player. And I think Hydration
Hmm.
does a lot more to set up his team for success, and I think we see the fruits of that in these past few matchups.
Do you think that's trainable?
You've had him for 2 seasons.
This is also true, but we haven't
And
had actual infrastructure for 2 seasons.
yeah, you've had him for 2 seasons prior to this, but also Muma has been playing Overwatch in a professional setting since 2016. And
Question still stands, dude.
yeah, I just you
Yes, but
either
not for someone with that pattern of behavior.
I think basically, do I think it's impossible to teach? No. But at the same time, I think that you need to I think if you don't show that development by this point, it makes me wonder if you're able to pick that up.
Fair.
It's either the coaches aren't doing a good enough job in sort of instilling that, or it's just not a or it's just not something that player can necessarily provide. And ultimately, I think Overwatch has become in Overwatch evolving strategically. The ability to lead your team, the ability to coordinate your team, the ability to play as a member of a unit rather than just a very good individual is so, so, so important. And I just, yeah, if you're not ready to do that, I don't know why I would start you over someone else.
So we were talking about how the Outlaws are doing a good job.
And
I'm not trying to invalidate your point. I just find this really funny. And it is a good point. Hydration has been performing very well as a main tank, and I don't think that's something any of us expected. Well, you might have. I didn't. Coming out of a DPS role.
yeah, he's a very, very good player. And we've seen him do it in some other scenarios of like pull out this main tank pick, but it was more like a pocket pick on like a control map or something.
Yeah.
But he's slotted into this role very nicely, and I think, if he keeps doing this and we keep seeing Linkser playing confidently and Dante just doing fucking Dante things, which he's another player that's improved so much since the start of the Overwatch League.
Yeah.
He went from okay to phenomenal.
Well, and remind me, he was on Shock, wasn't he?
Yes.
I wonder if it was also a matter of going from Shock, which has so much talent and so many people on the team, onto a team where maybe he's able to get more attention, maybe he's able to stand out a little more.
Well, I'm saying, like, even over the course of his games with the Shock, he really improved.
True.
Like, I think when you got him on the Outlaws, he was closer to a finished product than he was at the start.
Okay.
But yeah, I think honestly, this was a case of the Outlaws really playing up to their potential, and the Gladiators just not. I don't know what it is these past few matchups, but the Gladiators have just looked really, really shaky.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on with them. We tried out Paintbrush, and then a couple weeks later, we traded Paintbrush. Even then, this you look at this roster and you think it's a pretty solid lineup, and then we have no idea what's going on. Like, I feel like, and I say this as an Outlaws fan and a Gladiators fan, even with the Outlaws playing much better this time around, had Gladiators been playing up to their usual standard, this would have at least been closer,
Yeah, but
if not theirs.
Gladiators are just not these past few games performing at the level we expect them to.
Well, and I mean, they also got rolled by Boston. Not
Yeah.
completely, but losing to Boston when losing to Boston is a fucking meme is, that ain't great. That ain't
Yeah.
great.
And I wonder if, like, part of it, like, I think Deep is a very good coach and a very good GM. And I want to review some of the strategies because I remember watching this game and thinking, like, okay, well, that's weird. And I don't know if I think that's a good idea, but all right. And it kind of works. And it's like, he's a coach who I think likes to get creative to a certain extent and encourage players to do things like that.
So then we talked earlier about viewing some teams as weaker than others, viewing some teams as teams that you can experiment against. Do we think that that might have potentially been a factor here?
I don't think so. Like,
Fair.
I just don't think Deep is the sort of coach who would be like, all right, guys, we're gonna do this. I don't think he's the type of guy who would say, like, who would. He strikes me as the sort of person who wants to instill in his players that, okay, every fucking timeout we go 110.
Legit. But I'm not talking about like playing down to the opposite team. I'm talking about it's a better idea if we're going to try something creative, try it against Houston as opposed to trying it against Philly
Yeah,
or
but
San
remember,
Francisco.
he's the guy who came up with the idea for the great bamboozle against London in the playoffs of season 1. Like, he
True.
the dude absolutely has a willingness to just go fuck it Wolverines into, like, just he yeah, he'll I don't think that this is anything necessarily new out of him. I don't think this
Okay.
is, something that needs to be enabled by taking an opponent lightly. I think, just doing weird things that suit his team's strengths and being creative is just a Decay thing.
All right, well, we definitely need to see the Gladiators get back into an upswing, and seeing as they are against the Washington Justice this coming weekend, we might well get that. And by might well get that, I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
probably.
I would be if the Gladiators lose to Washington at this point, I will be very concerned.
Dallas did just lose to not San Francisco. Jeez, everyone's losing to San Francisco. Dallas did just lose to Vancouver.
Yeah, but Washington has showed less improvement.
This is also
And
true.
ultimately, I think that Washington still has on paper, despite some very good additions, a relatively weaker roster. Like, I think Tuba is good. I think, like, the thing is, I don't think there's a bad player on this team. It's just one of those things that I think there are holes in it. I think Roar still has yet to kind of live up to things, though he did play better in the last like matchup or two, especially because he and Stitch kind of combat squatted the way that Gesture and Prophet do to a certain extent, and we're kind of cleaning up kills together, and that was good. I like that synergy, and I think that's something to encourage. But I don't think Stitch and Tuba cover all the bases. And ultimately, Stitch is a very good Tracer and a very good McCree, but I think against a Widow specialist, he's a little deficient in that area. And I think against a player like someone like Haxal, Tuba is not going to do as well on projectile.
Yeah.
Um, Basically, I think they need another DPS to kind of round it out. Maybe an upgrade to the main tank spot. And I think again, as much as I like Ark and I think he's a good player, he is also one of those players who's not necessarily a flashy guy. And I feel like this season, if you look at Overwatch League season 3, a lot of the teams that are doing well are the teams that have someone who can pop off at every position, including Lucio, because like if you look at the best teams in league, you've got Gangnam Jin on Florida, or well, no, it's Chris. Yeah, Chris, not as much, but how many times has Houston gotten bailed out by Jexay getting like 2 or 3 kills?
Quite a few, because Jexay is an amazing human being and a good boy.
Yeah, and Philadelphia Fusion, Funny Astro, plays like a Reddit Lucio, but has a lot of super careful, like, he can do the Reddit Lucio playmaking without getting himself killed.
Yeah, plays like a Reddit Lucio with the intelligence and the skills to back it up.
Yeah, and Paris Eternal doing very well for most of the season. FD got super aggro Lucio that plays at a very, very high level. And on Seoul, I think we'll see Slime in the rotation a little more often. But basically, a lot of the teams that are doing super well, and Shanghai with Li Gong.
Also, I would
And
like to just point out Moth
I was about to say Moth
existing.
next.
Yeah.
The thing is, I think he's less flashy than them, but still a playmaker.
Yeah.
Like, I just wouldn't necessarily call him like a flashy main support, but yeah, basically main support, I think, is people are realizing that that role has a lot more fight altering sort of carry potential than it was kind of given in previous, go arounds. And
Well,
I
in
think,
previous go arounds, it was a lot of Mercy meta as well.
well, I mean, Lucio was still very widely used in good chunks of season 2 and most of season 3. But my point is that I think Ark is a competent player, but is not necessarily, when it comes to the ability to make plays that you're seeing out of some of the other main supports in the league, he's not giving his team that same value.
So, long story short, the Justice continues to be a ramshackle gallivanting mess.
Yeah, the thing is, I've said it before. I'll say it again. I think Stitch and Janu are good pickups. I don't think they necessarily fix the problems that we had on this team.
Yeah, like if you I have this image in my head and I cannot for the life of me figure out what the hell it is, but it's you've got all the parts, but they are not put together correctly, and that thing is just boom when it should be going smoothly. Not a good description of anything, but you know
No,
what I mean.
I I get the point you're making. I don't
Yeah,
think I know what
something
you're
in there is
talking
rattling
about.
because this machine is not fitting together properly.
Yeah,
Anyway, yay! That's kind of how this podcast feels at this point.
yeah,
We're doing it. I promise we're doing it. All right. Well, I am going to take a mental break before we get into the news. And we are going to take a moment to talk about our sponsor. Because, yes, talking about cookies is indeed a mental break. So, our sponsor, as always, is Fred's BS, Breads and Spreads by Fred. At the moment, during these completely insane quarantine times in which we have found ourselves, Fred has currently narrowed his focus to cookies, and they are unbelievably good. They are called brown sugar buddies. They're like something between, they're a cross between a ginger snap and a spice cookie and a molasses cookie. They're chewy, they're flavorful, they are incredible. They are really good if you dip them in your morning hot beverage of choice. If you're a tea drinker, coffee drinker, hot cocoa in the middle of June, go for it. I guess you do you. They're also extremely good for ice cream sandwiches. I would say this is the kind of cookie that you put the really rich flavors in between the double chocolate, the butter brickle, all that fun stuff. Really, really good cookies, only from Fred. Everything is fresh, never frozen. He makes these cookies in small batches. You cannot find them in stores. And in order to get your hands on them, you go to fredhebakes.com. So three words, fredhebakes.com, and use coupon code on the point for 20% off your entire order. Fredhebakes.com, coupon code on the point. Get yourself some cookies. You deserve it. All right, on to the news. We have so many things in our pickups and leaving section. Holy cow.
yeah. Packing 10 promoted to Valiant GM and head coach. He was already head coach, but they've given him the GM position as well, which I think is a very good move. He's has shown a great ability to build and lead this team, and I think just giving him kind of more or less complete control over it can only do them good at this point because he has rapidly, like, I thought he was a good coach before he joined the Valiant, and he has rapidly just shot up that list for me of like, oh, this guy's a complete package.
Well, and he took over after Coach Moon left in the middle of season 2, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, after Coach Moon was fired.
Yeah. I didn't remember if that was the case specifically. I didn't want to say anything, so thank
I
you.
yeah, I don't think he left. I think he was let go.
Yeah. I mean, Valiant early season 2, there's a reason for.
And, I mean, he's
Anyway,
doing well for the Dragons right now, so
he
evidently
really is.
got his stuff together. Though I think he also has an incredible roster and other really great coaches helping. Like the Dragons are a perfect storm. Anyway,
Oh, yeah. So this is a good move for the Valiant and
absolutely,
well deserved for packing 10.
yeah, absolutely. He's been grinding in the scene for so long and done so much that he really does just deserve this sort of promotion.
Moving on to everything that is happening with the Washington Justice.
Yeah. So pretty much they've gotten one big drop, one promotion, and one pickup. In the drop category, we have Stratus fully parting ways with the Washington Justice. Um,
They say it's mutual. I find myself wondering,
I
but we'll
mean,
see.
yeah, it just It seems like this team is just a trash fire behind the scenes. I don't know what's happening, but I've seen other like people in the know commenting on it. Like I think Packing 10 when so kind of tying news in together here.
Yeah.
Supreme, who was previously their coach and prior to that a coach for the Korean the Korean contenders team and slash Apex Challengers team 7, um, and was the coach for the was a coach for the Hangzhou Spark behind that. He after they parted ways with John Galt, they have promoted Supreme to the head coach position.
Yeah.
So Packing 10, I believe, during that commented something on like, congratulations on this big thing. If there's anyone who can bring some order to the perennial tire fire, it's you.
Yeah, it was a thing.
Yeah.
It was a thing. Hoy. So that's we the Justice have a new head coach and a new assistant coach.
Yeah, with the new assistant coach being Chilwa. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but prior to this, he was a coach for WGS Armament, which is the team where we got a lot of the current roster of the Florida Mayhem, actually. Um, Basically, you'll recognize names like Gargoyle, Karayan, DPI, who they ended up, I believe, letting go, um, and also Mandu and Myunbong. Mandu currently on NYXL and Myunbong currently on Boston.
Yeah.
So he was a coach for WGS Armament, and then became a coach for O2 Blast, who I've mentioned on the show a few times, who just won Korean Contenders.
Nice.
Yeah,
So we'll see how this goes for Washington, the dumpster fire.
yeah,
Oh, jeez.
yeah,
I
yeah.
have all these nice pictures in my Washington getup, and now it's like, oh.
Pretty much. It's I don't know like necessarily what part he played in O2 Blast or WGS Armament just because I didn't follow that super closely, but we will see how he is able to try and impose order on the chaos as well.
We'll see.
Yeah, moving forward, we have Dallas with 2 pickups, Paintbrush taking him from the Gladiators, and Onigod, who we've kind of talked about both of these to a certain extent in previous podcasts,
Yeah.
like Onigod earlier today and Paintbrush previously. So I don't think we need to get too much into that.
Yeah. We're just waiting for Dallas to integrate them a little better. Try something different.
Yeah,
See
pretty
what
much.
sticks.
Yeah, it'll take time to experiment before we can really see how this goes. And up next, QOQ, picked up by the Hangzhou Spark. He's an off tank player, known mostly for his diva, but he does have a very good Zarya as well. He started off on MVP Space. Well, nah, he started off on eHome Spear, and which is actually where we got Geggery.
Wow.
Yeah, and Vol'jin, who is one of the coaches for the Dallas Fuel.
And he played pretty solidly this past weekend.
Oh, QQ is very, very good. He kind of really got his chance to make a name for himself as part of Runaway, where he picked up 2 Korean Contenders Championships, another 2, another 2. He picked up a 3rd place in the Gauntlet, a 3rd, 4th finish in another season of Korean Contenders. Basically, he was part of Runaway's first like rebuilt roster after their entire roster got signed to the Vancouver Titans for the 2019 season. Um, did very, very well with them, and ended up going to another Korean team called T1, where he picked up a week. He won the first week of Korean Contenders 2020, and had another second place finish in the NetEase Esports X tournament. They have 4 of those per year, and they came in second.
So he's terrifying.
He's a very, very good player who has been tested at a very high level. I think he's one of those players who is definitely a very, very good pickup for this team and can really only help the Hangzhou Spark, especially because he seems to have integrated very well very quickly. And while, again, I think the Spark is a very strong team overall, I think the off-tank spot has kind of been a lacking position for them for a little while. Like, Rhea is good, but I don't know if I'd put him on the same level as, some of the better off tanks in the league, and he's currently inactive. And I definitely don't put Sashin. I don't know how.
I think it's Sassen.
I've heard both, and I don't pretend to be knowledgeable on how Korean works as a language. Um,
Same.
but yeah, so I think, having him be on that front line along with Gushui is just a very scary proposition that I think the more time he has with this team, the better he's going to look.
Well, I think New York found it particularly scary on Friday night.
Yeah, no, like I said, QOQ is good, and he seems to have taken to this roster very, very quickly.
All right. And we have a pickup for the Gladiators.
Yes, they have picked up Kevster, who actually was from the same team as Onigod.
Oh,
Yeah, they're both from Team Doge.
so this is all weirdly connected.
Yes. So basically, Team Doge was formed by the players from Team Envy after Dallas Fuel cut their contenders academy team.
Yeah, that is the second time you've mentioned that tonight.
Yeah, I
We're
know.
in the 102 class now.
Anyway,
History
he's
102.
anyway. Yeah, he was only very briefly a part of Team Envy, but he's a Swedish player. He is known for he can do like Tracer, Widowmaker, and Ashe, but he's also got a good Pharah, and he is solid on Echo. So it's like basically, if there's a mobile hero who's good at sort of playing angles, he can be very solid on it. As Team Doge, he won Fran's Overwatch Community Cup, won Season 1 2020 of Contenders NA, and previously has competed for a couple different organizations across NA and EU. He was actually previously part of NRG Esports, which was the academy team for the San Francisco Shock.
So he's got a hell of a pedigree.
Yes, he's been playing for about 2 years at the professional level now.
Nice.
Yeah, he's a very good pickup, and I think he'll add a lot to this roster. Especially, I will say the Gladiators DPS line, while it's very good, part of me wonders like how you. I'm just wondering in what situation you use who.
You don't think it
Because,
fits together as well?
well, no, it's just like so Jaru, he's Genji, Tracer, Sombra, Pharah, Doomfist. So he's already got some overlap with Kevster in terms of Tracer and Pharah. Meanwhile, Birdring has some overlap with Kevster. Mirror also has some overlap with Kevster because he can Widowmaker, but he can also Genji, Doomfist, and Hanzo. Like, I'll be interested to see in how they use these pieces and establish like a consistent rotation, like when you would use, say, Kevster over Jaru or Mirror over Birdring or like whatever happens. It's just there's a lot of overlap, and I think that they have all the bases covered, so it's not like Shanghai Dragons where there was a ton of overlap and also a ton of gaps.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm just interested to see what this looks like as sort of a finished product.
Well, with any luck, we'll get to see a little bit more of that coming in next week. Because we got some this past week, but it was that's when the Outlaws decided that, hey, let's take this match.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think he played badly.
No, no, but the Outlaws played very well.
That they did. Um, and next up we have two departures, shall we say?
Yes,
So
let's say that.
two members that sort of play behind the scenes roles in two Overwatch League teams, the Mayhem and the Shock. Antoine, who is a graphic designer for the Mayhem, and Neil, who was a social media manager for the San Francisco Shock. I believe Antoine is currently suspended without leave. Neil has been definitively fired. And they have been fired because accusations came out against them regarding
Regarding
misconduct of a number of flavors, and I don't want to get into that here because it's very ugly and negative, but I think it's important that we highlight this because we believe the people who speak out against their abusers.
believe survivors, believe women, that Venn diagram overlap is not a circle.
No, it is not. There are absolutely, people of other identities that suffer abuse as well, but both of the women who spoke out against these two, we believe you, we respect you, and we are
We're
glad
with
to
you.
hear your story because shit like this cannot go unaddressed. And I'm very happy to see that the Mayhem and the Shock are both not hesitating to do that.
That I can appreciate. And I can appreciate again that Boston did the same thing when the accusations came up against Muffin. Like I
And Vesper,
appreciate and yeah.
they've had some practice.
Yeah. I appreciate that teams are taking this seriously, especially when you look over in professional meat sports, as it were,
Oh,
and things like this go straight under the rug.
yeah,
So I thank you to the organizations and the teams for not only taking this seriously, but acting on it swiftly. Thank you.
yeah, and just I think I think it's an unmitigated good to address this, to deal with it, and to just confront the problematic elements in this scene because ultimately we're all here because we love Overwatch. And frankly, I wouldn't want to have this sullied by knowing that abusers and people who do this sort of shit can flourish here.
Yeah. For a game about inclusivity, Overwatch has a lot of assholes in its fandom and in its periphery. And
Uh,
it's
I,
our job to look after our community.
we gotta hold people accountable. And
Clean house.
as someone who's been a gamer for a very very long time, and who's been involved in that whole culture for a very very long time, there's a lot of sexism and homophobia and that maybe isn't even like necessarily explicit like in terms of like active hate, but there's a lot of toxic shit in that culture that needs to be confronted.
Oh yeah. And I leave my teammates out to dry every time one of them tells me to get back in the kitchen and make a sandwich, because yeah, I play support and you don't deserve to play this game, so I'm not keeping you alive.
Yep.
But there's only so much you can do. So what I'm saying is, you catch your friends and your teammates doing it, you fucking let them know it's not okay.
Yeah.
Clean house. We
Hold
are
people
all
accountable.
responsible for that. Yeah. There's no good segue for this.
No, but
Let's talk about the coaches.
yeah, we talked a bit about Arrow's handling of the Vancouver match. I've said
There
pretty
I
much everything
just
I need to say about it.
I have not.
Yeah, no, I know, I know.
I just again I wow, words, thank you. As someone who's good at words, as someone who has that English degree and puts a lot of emphasis on written language, it's one thing, and hilariously, both of the things we're going to talk about with coaches center around Decay as a player. Like, you want to tell us that Decay is taking a week off. Awesome. Good to know, as fans were worried about him, especially since other people on other teams have had injuries and have had to take time off for that.
Yeah,
Looking at you, XE, glad you're feeling better. Um, there's that. If you want to tell us he's taken a couple weeks off, great. If you want to tell us you're trying something new, great. For the love of God, why would you come out and say, yeah, we're going up against Vancouver and Toronto, so we figured it's a good time to try shit out? Like, it's one thing for that to be your strategy. Like, fine, you want to do that, cool. It's one thing to think that way. It's another thing to say the quiet part not only loud, but officially in a statement that
yeah.
shows up during Watchpoint. Stop it. Like, I just, man, I know I made the comment about calling 8 Ball corner pocket and then being made to look a fool, but that's disrespectful to the teams you're up against, for one. Saying,
Hmm.
hey, we know you're terrible and therefore we're flexing on you. And of course, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But it also makes you look like an ass in that you're being disrespectful. And it makes you look like an ass in that your team is not performing after you've basically talked shit in an official capacity. And I say that on a week when Dogman had a really nice, respectful interview. I was
Hmm.
surprised and actually really liked that. It's like, good job, Dogman. And then Arrow had to say things. Like, we can't have nice things when it comes to people talking.
Yeah, this is one of those things that, like, I agree it's cocky and he got slapped for it. I don't necessarily take as much offense to it as you do because I
I would
think,
find it disrespectful if anybody did it.
oh yeah, no, 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 trust me, it's definitely disrespect, but I think like the egg is firmly on his face at this point.
Yeah, well, it's definitely going to make me root for Toronto even harder this coming
Yeah,
weekend.
and it's one of those things that, like, again, in my experience, having met the man several times and having tuned into a bunch of his streams, Arrow's a pretty nice guy. Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, you fucked up. Like, trust me,
So,
I'm not saying that it's
oh, I know,
not
I know.
cocky or stupid or anything. It's just one of those things that I don't know what I can add to that, basically.
Yeah, and again, we've got very different opinions on the man because we have different levels of having consumed his content, and that's
Yeah.
fine. Moving on, with people asking, all right, well, why is Decay taking a break? Is he okay? Does anyone know what he's doing?
Someone decided that was a good time to talk shit.
Fucking Seffi, and we were
Yeah.
talking about him earlier. Seffi shows up on Reddit and basically says, "Oh yeah, he's heard that Decay benched himself and he's playing Valorant a lot." And poor Decay on his next Overwatch stream basically has to go, "I don't know what he's talking about."
Yeah, and it's another thing that, like, he streams Overwatch all the time. You can look at his stream even before that and know that this is completely baseless. And also, um there are other professionals who came out and said, what the fuck? Like Neptuno straight up said on Twitter, I never thought I'd see an owl coach go into Reddit and spread rumors of other teams slash players that hurts their image out of nowhere.
You know what this reminds me of?
Was that?
Bare hands. Fucking bare hands going
Yeah.
after Sleepy. That's what this is. And it's one thing to do what Arrow did, call the shot, make an ass of yourself. It's another thing to go after, because Decay's not very old, is he? He's young.
I think he's 18 or 19.
Yeah, he's a kid. He's he's old
Yeah, I'm
enough
looking it
to
up right
be
now.
in the yeah, he's
Yeah,
old
he's
enough to
19.
be yeah, he's old enough to be in the league barely. He's still young. He is a high school senior, he is a college freshman. You are a grown ass man.
We're 37.
Oh my god. You are a grown ass man going after someone 18 years younger than you. What the fuck is wrong with
I
you?
like I
Like, I don't have fancy words for this. This is just bullying.
I
And
don't
it's
even
stupid.
yeah, I don't even think it was malicious or anything, but like what fucking possibly possessed you to be like, yeah, this is a good idea to say.
I mean, it's one thing to show up like as Joe Schmo Redditor and spread bullshit. You're
Yeah,
Joe Schmo Redditor.
you're a
Let's
fucking professional. You've been involved in this scene for years. You were a coach for an incredibly successful Overwatch League franchise. You're now the coach for a different successful Overwatch League franchise. What, in a professional capacity, what makes you think this is a good idea to say? Especially if you don't know for a fact. Like, I think it'd be unprofessional and stupid to say that even if you 100% knew and it wasn't demonstrably bullshit.
yeah.
But this is demonstrably bullshit, and he still said it, which I just don't get.
Like, and it would be one thing if it was, and we're going back to this, it would be one thing if it was Dogman. It would be one thing if it was another player. Like, it's one thing for a player to talk shit about another player. It happens, they're on the same level. It is a very different thing for an administrator, a coach, someone who is at a different level above the players to turn around and go after a player that's not even on their team. It's a bad idea to go after the players on your team anyway in a capacity like this. But again, you're going after someone who is half your age and on a different team. This is not your place. This reflects badly on you as a human being, as a professional who is in a position of authority over players who are about this player's age, and it reflects poorly on your organization. Like, this was such an incredibly pants on head, stupid thing to do. I can't fucking. You're 5 years older than me. Get your shit together.
Yeah, and it's like, I'll admit,
I
I
can't
haven't
fathom
followed the
that.
man that closely, but he has a reputation for being a generally nice dude. So, like, this is just stupid and baffling.
To the point where it's like, did someone fucking hack your Reddit account? Did you? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's all the news that's fit to not print. So yeah, I'm still kind of waiting on the retraction, the statement, the something from Seffi. If he's going to say things like this, I don't know if it will ever come, but I feel like that's not something you can just throw out there, even if it's I made a joke and it was in incredibly poor taste and I should not have done the thing. Like, acknowledge something because you fucked up.
Yeah. Um, I have nothing else to say to it. It's stupid. You shouldn't have said it, and whatever the case is, you fucked up. Moving on. Speaking of people formerly associated with the San Francisco Shock, we finally got the MVP skin for Zarya, based on Sinatra.
Yeah, he went for a full alien skin, and I love that it's basically Men in Black.
Yeah, like I know that it's kind of polarized. Like a lot of people
Love it
don't
or hate
like
it.
it. Yeah, it's very love it or hate it. I love the idea, and the thing is, I also like it's kind of a meme in the Overwatch community that it's a reference to a meme about Sinatra specifically, just because it's been a long running joke that he looks like an alien. That like because of just the shape of his head, that he kind of
Yeah.
looks like one of the gray aliens. So it became a meme in his chat that he kind of embraced,
Yeah.
and so it amuses me to see him being like, "Yeah, all right, I'm a lean even harder into the fucking meme right now."
He's leaned so hard into this curve, he's horizontal. And
Oh
it's
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah,
I
he's like,
really like this.
yeah, no, I genuinely enjoy the the humor and spirit of it. I think it's nice, and I think it's a good I think it's a good representation of the man himself.
Yeah. And if you watch the video with the people who designed it going over it with him, and they highlight all of the little touches they did, like obviously they put a lot of work and a lot of love into this skin.
Oh
There,
yeah.
I mean, there are some skins on occasion you look at one and you're like, what and why? But for the most part, they do a good job, and this one is exemplary.
Yeah, no, and like I know that it's maybe not as flashy or elaborate or whatever as a lot of others. I really like it for what it is. I think it's a
Yeah,
very. I think if you're gonna make a skin for Sinatra, It's pretty fucking good.
You might as well go with Men in Black Zarya.
Yeah, you might as well go with the meme that he embraces with a lot of little touches about him personally. It suits the man.
He likes it, and that's what matters.
Yeah, and honestly, I like it too. Like, I think
Yeah, it's a
it
good look.
yeah, I always find people embracing those kind of jokes heartwarming.
Yeah. So yeah, the MVP skin for Sinatra for Zarya is up. I believe it's still available for purchase with Overwatch League tokens. Do
Yes,
the thing.
I will absolutely be getting it.
This is as of the recording on June 25th, so
Yes.
I think they're probably going to keep that available for a while.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
All right.
Shall we get into what will be happening not so far into the future with week 21?
Yeah, this is our last week of qualifiers for the Summer Showdown, and we have no hero pool.
Mm-hmm.
So this opens up a few more strategies.
Yeah, and I think there will definitely be some teams that benefit from this,
Oh, absolutely.
and some teams that maybe benefited a bit from the previous hero pool, kind of eliminating some options that fall down a little bit.
But that said, having a 2 week hero pool, being able to look back at it in practice, I think worked much better than switching from week to week.
I have said it before, and I will continue to say it loudly from the rooftops. 1 week hero pools are stupid and will burn out players and coaches and generally lower the quality of the games that we see.
Well, they listened to you, and here we
Good.
are. So we have no hero pool coming into week 21, and we're starting off with the Chengdu Hunters versus the Guangzhou Charge.
Guangzhou.
Yep, Chengdu's been pulling it together, but Guangzhou just likes to show up and run trains, so
Yeah,
here we are.
Guangzhou hasn't changed a bit in a good way.
Good. Mele finals rematch: Seoul Dynasty versus the Shanghai Dragons.
Shanghai.
Still on Shanghai, there's an over-under on whether or not they do yet another reverse sweep. Just average one a
Honestly,
week, Shanghai. Give us all heart attacks.
yeah, it's one of those things of like, obviously Seoul is ridiculously up and down, but I feel like with Echo coming back into the rotation, and Brig coming back into the rotation,
Mm-hmm.
I think it changes the complexion of things a bit, because Prophet, as amazing as he is, I don't think has taken to the Echo as well as he's taken to a lot of other heroes. And I think that Toby is a good Brig, but sometimes he'll go to try and make the play the way that you would on a Lucio, and it doesn't quite work. I remember on Watchpoint
I'm imagining
Gibraltar.
Bring wall running.
God, that's scary.
Death from above.
No, I just remember one time in the Watchpoint Gibraltar, like point A defense, he tried to go on a flank and just ended up getting fucking murdered and kind of lost the whole game for his team.
Yikes. Yeah, Brig's a hard one to kind of pin down. She's
Not.
good, but
The thing is, like, I could get into it, but that's not. I think her place is pretty well defined at this point. It's just this is not the place to talk about it, and I would be going on about theory crafting for a while.
I feel like we should do a side episode that's just theory, especially since the Genji changes are going to be in for, I believe, this week and the Summer Showdown.
Yes,
So that'll be
I
bonkers.
have been incorporating that into what my team is doing.
Nice. Continuing on, Hangzhou Spark versus London Spitfire.
Hangzhou.
Yeah, London's good, but they ain't that good. Definitely
Mhm.
Hangzhou. Moving west, we have Florida versus Houston. Florida coming off of a loss to the Valiant, and Houston coming off of a win over the Gladiators.
I'm going with Florida on this.
Yeah, just we've seen so much more out of Florida, and with the hero pool opening up, it's a nice upward swing for Houston, but Florida hasn't let up.
I think this comes down to two things more than anything. Like, provided Outlaws play to the level that they did against the Gladiators, provided they're that tight and cohesive and they look that practiced, It comes down to who wins the Tracer 1v1s between Yaki and Dante, and whether or not Linkser shows up. Because Linkser is very good, but he definitely is kind of hot and cold.
Yeah, and we have established that Yaki is a terrifying tracer.
Yeah,
Just a horror show. We've also established that Dante is a terrifying tracer, but I feel like we've seen it a little more consistently from Yaki this season.
yes. Well, partially because like Outlaws hasn't played as much Tracer recently as the Mayhem have.
True. So
Um,
that I think that's going to be one of our matches to watch, and I
oh,
would say that
absolutely.
we've got 2 or 3 in here that are like
If the
this one.
Outlaws are firing on all cylinders, I think they have a chance. That
Yeah,
being said, I like the Florida Mayhem's odds a bit better. And I think those two factors that I mentioned are going to be a big difference. And I think Gargoyle versus Meko is also going to be a big difference. And I think the
yeah.
playmaking ability of Gargoyle can kind of swing things in the favor of the Mayhem, provided his DPS line haven't been able to sort of oust the Houston DPS line.
Like I would love for Houston to win, but Florida is the safer, more consistent bet at this point, and that is
Yeah.
what I'm going with. And then I'm throwing that to the wind in this next one, Dallas Fuel versus Toronto Defiant, and betting Toronto out of pure whole ass spite.
I'm
And
going
the
for
fact that Dallas said that they're not putting Decay in this coming week.
yeah, but well, one that might change.
True.
I hope it does. But
I mean, if the man wants a break, give the man a break. He probably
yeah,
needs a chiropractor from the Decay deadlift he's been doing.
oh, absolutely. But yeah, I think with this matchup, I'm going Fuel because I think we've seen their ceiling in terms of what they have shown on the field is a lot higher, especially with Decay. Whereas Toronto hasn't shown me any real meaningful improvement that materialized against anyone besides Vancouver.
Yeah, Fuel is definitely the safer bet. I'm not kidding when I'm doing this out of whole ass spite.
No, I know, and I ain't judging you for it because
We are
here's the
back to the
thing.
era of Katie making
Because
dumbass bets
because
because she
well no
can.
because here's the thing. Here's the thing. Season 2 Fuel did not learn many lessons. And I'm hoping right now that the new additions to the coaching staff and the new additions to the roster allow Fuel to learn from the loss that they just had. If they play Decay, great. If they learn from those losses, from those map losses, that to me is the far bigger signifier of where this team is and whether or not all the and whether or not Fuel needs to really overhaul the back end.
So, regardless of how they play it, we're going to learn something from them.
Yes,
Or something
I
about them, I suppose.
yes, that
Okay.
would be my assessment.
Okay. Moving on, we've got a blue on blue match. We've got Vancouver Titans versus the Boston Uprising. And
I
this,
hate rooting for
how do you
Boston.
choose?
I hate pulling for a Boston team, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to say Boston takes this.
Now, is this based on gameplay or is this based on Vancouver's management being shit?
No, it's based on gameplay. I think Boston has played to a higher level, and while Vancouver has improved, I think Boston has leveled up a little bit more. And with the new additions they've made, they really look like they have a new lease on life, where Vancouver is kind of starting things. I think it could go either way. I just like what I've seen out of Boston in these past couple games more. And if they can continue that pattern, I think they win this. But I think it will be a fairly competitive game. I think Vancouver can actually compete. And I think that, yeah, I think this will be a good indicator of where Boston is at because they're up against sort of a rising opponent here, as opposed to like Paris, who definitely has been struggling a little bit these past 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Um, and so this will be a good gauge of where they're at and if they can maintain this form.
I'm going to go Vancouver. I think
It's
they've
it's a
got
totally reasonable bet.
yeah, I think they've got a good tool in their tool set when it comes to fucking Shockwave's Echo, and we're getting Echo back in play this week. I
Yes.
don't think we can underestimate that. And from what I've seen, they strike me as a very aggressive team.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly not sure how Boston's going to deal with that. So I'm hoping, regardless, that we're going to see some good Overwatch here. Like, I am hoping for a clash. I don't want a 3-0 blowout. I want a map 5.
Yeah. And
I want both of these teams to fucking go for it.
I think if Boston plays at the level that they have recently, it'll be the 3-1 in their favor. But we'll see.
Again, I don't. I'm pulling for the Decepticon, which is not something you'll hear me say often. And I think Titans coming off of that win over Dallas is definitely going to help.
Oh, for sure. I think it gives them a lot of confidence, gives them some momentum. But I think Boston's level of performance has just been that little bit higher.
Yeah. Either way, it should be a good 4 p.m. match, which may or
Yeah.
may not actually start at 4 p.m. Most of these matches have been taking 75 minutes flat.
Yeah. Anyway,
Speaking of 75 minutes flat, Washington Justice versus LA Gladiators. It's a
Gladiator.
shield.
Gladiator.
Yeah,
Words
it's the
that
shield.
rhyme something something ater.
It's a shield showdown,
Yeah.
and let's be real, even with the Gladiators having the issues that they've been having recently, there's still a cut above the way that the Washington Justice have been playing. I
Yeah.
don't think they can afford to not take this match seriously, because we've seen what happens when teams don't do that. But I think, as long as they play to the level that we know they're capable of, they've got this.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Moving on to the next night, Shanghai Dragons versus Hangzhou Spark.
Shanghai 3-1.
Oh wow, we're getting do we count that as a loss if they don't do that exactly? How do the numbers work on this?
I think
I'm
it
being a
counts.
shitbird.
I think it counts as a loss for me if you make a prediction and that one comes out to be correct. If
See,
you
I was
make
just
a
gonna go
specific prediction.
Shanghai.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to see Hangzhou upset it just for the batshit insanity of it all.
Oh
But
yeah, and
I'm
I
just
think with
saying Shanghai
QOQ,
in general.
I think with QOQ and Architect, they could conceivably do it. I think it'll be a very close 3-1.
But we're also looking at, again, the hero pool being opened up.
Yes.
So yeah, so that I would put that as another one of my games to watch, definitely. But I am coming down on the side of Shanghai, and I would not be surprised if they reverse swept it again, because that seems to be what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, Boston is no longer the reverse sweep team. Great, can we do that?" And all of their fans are like, "Please stop giving us heart attacks. Oh my god."
Up next, Chengdu versus Seoul. How do you predict this?
God, it's yellow versus gold. You
Okay,
you flip a fucking coin. That's what you do.
honestly,
I'm gonna do it.
I was picking one up.
Me too.
I didn't decide what was going to be heads or tails before I flipped it.
All right, so
So I'm
heads
gonna.
Chengdu,
Okay,
tails Seoul.
okay, I'm going Chengdu.
So am I.
All right.
Okay. Sometimes that's the only way to do it. You do the bread cat and you flip a coin.
Yeah,
Uh
pretty much.
yeah. After that, we have NYXL versus Guangzhou, which should I get the coin back out? God.
I'm gonna
I'm going
go
Guangzhou.
Guangzhou, but it's gonna be very, very close.
Yeah, this is another one that could go either way. I don't think it will be quite as on fire as Shanghai versus Hangzhou, but I do think it will be hard fought. After that, we have another blue versus blue. We have LA Valiant versus Paris Eternal. I'm so tired of every team in this league being blue. Jesus. Valiant,
Valiant,
definitely.
Valiant.
The way they've been playing versus the way Paris has been playing, and we've got that nice little rivalry story with Soon being a former Valiant member. Yeah, no, Valiant.
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta Reign versus Vancouver Titans.
Atlanta, but very, very close.
Yeah,
I predict a map 5.
Atlanta is a smarter bet, and I will take Atlanta on this one, but god damn, I would love to see Vancouver win. I just would.
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of issues with the Vancouver management, but god damn if this lineup isn't just starting to grow on me.
I think if they beat Atlanta here, their prospects look very interesting going forward.
Yeah. And after that, we have that's the third of my matches to watch this week, and what we thought was going to be the finals of the May Melee. Philadelphia Fusion versus San Francisco Shock, the Orange Bowl.
And with hero pools unlocked.
San Francisco all the fucking way.
Yeah, I think, again, I'm predicting a 3-1 San Francisco.
I would not be surprised. I would also not be surprised to see a very hard fought 3-0.
I think, yeah, it's going to be like Philly has some shit to prove here.
They do, and they've got all these people going. They're seated above San Francisco right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like Dragons are seeded one over just in overall seeding, not necessarily for the upcoming tournament, but overall. Philadelphia is seeded as the number 2 team. Shock is third, and Dragons are sitting at number 1. So, yeah, this is just kind of a rivalry born of win records, and I think color. Just it's the orange teams. Let's go.
Well, yeah, this is the East meets West Bowl right now.
It is. It is. And I will be excited to see this, and I will be fucking gobsmacked if San Francisco loses.
Yeah, I think I will say though, if Philly's got some shit to pull out of the bag of tricks, we're either going to see it now or in the tournament.
Yeah. But this, as much as I make jokes about like the Decay deadlift and the Carpe carry, I don't think the Carpe carry can be your trump card against San Francisco Shock.
Well, the thing is, I think you can definitely take that into account, but you can't rely on it.
Yeah.
Like, Carpe is a motherfucker. We know this. This is just
yes.
but ultimately, you've got people on the other side who can pop off just as hard or pressure him just as hard. Basically, if you are not firing on all cylinders, he is not going to have the room to make up that difference.
Yeah. I mean, San Francisco is, I want to say, almost perpetually on their A game. And Philly is going to need to bring theirs to keep up with that.
Philly is going to need to just channel every bit of their power for this.
Just full gritty mode. Full gritty mode.
Yeah, you need to just be in full gritty mode. You need to eat the fucking cheesesteaks. You need to like meditate in the presence of the Liberty Bell. Just absorb the Philly energy until you are ready.
But if you're going to do cheesesteaks, make sure you do takeout instead of dine-in. And if you're going to go to the Liberty Bell, make sure you wear a mask and social distance. God damn it.
Correct. And also, for anyone who has an opinion on the cheesesteak feud...
That made me very happy. Florida
like...
talking shit was beautiful. Let's be
God,
real.
Yeah.
Anyway, so anyone who has an opinion on the cheesesteak feud, you were going somewhere with that.
Yes. So basically, there are two places that kind of claim to be the original cheesesteak, like the originator. Pat's King of Steaks or Geno's. I am a Pat's man.
I'm a Pat's man. Again, this is why you keep me. I've never been to Philadelphia. I don't know these things, but I will fight you over the best place to get food out here.
Yeah. Yeah. Pat, like, the best way to put it is Pat's King of Steaks looks... I'll send you a picture of it. Just look it up and just tell me which one of those looks like the premium hole-in-the-wall spot.
Supposedly there's a good cheesesteak hole-in-the-wall out here in Los Angeles, but hell if I can remember what it's called. So that's not helpful. Hey, commenters, if you know a good cheesesteak place in LA, tell CJ. I don't care.
Yeah, I love cheesesteaks. Geno's and Pat's are fucking incredible, but Pat's just a little bit.
And I could take them or leave them, but that's neither here nor there. That's why I'm going for San Francisco, because I don't care about cheesesteaks. Anyway, We have one last match on Sunday, and we have
We
no
can't
idea
talk
who's
about
playing
it.
it because it's the play-in match for the Summer Showdown.
Yeah, it's who will be squeaking in there for the last place seed.
I would like to say, for one, thank you, Overwatch League, for not putting this on the Friday of the
Yes.
showdown because that was
Yes.
too much in the Melee. That was I was dead by the end of the night. No, too
Mhm.
much. I think we should pick which teams we think will be in that match. Washington.
Washington and Toronto.
Yeah, probably.
And I think Toronto's going to go through.
Yeah, definitely. I think whoever's up against Washington has a good chance of getting through. Probably not getting much further than that, but getting through. But let's be real, it's going to be Washington down there unless they have a minor miracle this weekend, which I don't think they're capable of.
I don't think they can do the heavy lifting required to summon the will of the Almighty.
They have no more Corey,
Nope.
and he was their carry boy when he was able to pop off. He was the one that was able to do it,
Well,
and
also
he's
speaking
not
of
there.
Corey and Zachary both signed to FaZe Clan's Valorant team.
This does not surprise me.
No,
All right. So that'll I love predicting mystery matches. It's fun.
it is.
Does it make any sense? No. Are we doing it anyway? Absolutely.
Fuck it.
So yeah, once again, we agree on pretty much everything except for the one.
Yeah.
I think it's just the one. I don't think we disagreed on anything else.
I went with Boston over Vancouver. You went with
Oh,
Vancouver.
that's true. We have two. So at this point, you have the opportunity to catch up with me because I think I'm two ahead of you.
Yes.
Well, this will be fun. It'll be fun
Yeah.
anyway because it's a weekend of Overwatch League.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Can you think of any news that we've missed? Has
Nope.
Reddit come up with anything in the past hour and a half that we should know about? Or will all the breaking news happen tomorrow? Because it always does the day after we record.
I am checking Reddit.
All
Not seeing
right.
anything new. There's a double
Okay.
tokens event in Overwatch League, 27th and 28th.
Yeah, so eat your
Double
Wheaties,
tokens.
watch your Overwatch League, get your tokens. It'll be a good time.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'm Katie. You can find me all over the social medias as well as on YouTube and Twitch at Kiaxet. That is Kiaxet.
I'm CJ. You can find me on Twitter at _rage_nerd. And I am also head coach of Decima. We're an Overwatch team competing in Tier 3. We are going to be trying to compete in some more tournaments. We just won the Salty Fishes Fishbowl Community Tournament.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So we applied to be in Friends Charity Cup. Did not get in, but we will hopefully you guys will see us in the future. In the meantime, just follow us on Twitter.
Yeah. Support tier 2, support tier 3.
Yeah.
And we, of course, we save the most important things for last. If you can protest, protest. If you cannot protest, support the movement. Black Lives Matter, Black Gay Lives Matter, Black Trans Lives Matter, Black LGBTQ Lives Matter. Defund the police. If you can stay inside, stay inside. If you have to leave the house, wear a mask. Support your essential workers. Be safe. We love you. Let's C9.